Chapter 1711. A Turtle's Tragedy. While Opal turned the spare warehouse into a luxury spa for bunny girls, Carl was turning the apartments for the new immortals into something that looked less like rubble and more like the traditional apartment blocks that they had been. Only with a few upgrades that the original designers hadn't bothered with, or hadn't known about. The most notable of the changes was the fact that Carl added the basic runes for mana gathering to the main room in every apartment and put a small mana crystal in the floor so that they could keep a diffuse collection of stored mana within the clan. Not only would it help everyone's progression, it would also provide backup mana if the clan was attacked again. In an emergency, every bit of mana that could be called upon to keep the barriers up mattered, and if their existing defenses could have taken a few more hits, the new home merchant clan wouldn't have been doing as much repair work. Carl could sense Leo's despair as the turtle realized that the school had been smashed, and they were going to have to sort through it all for valuable reading materials before they could start reconstruction. That was a tragedy to the young turtle. He had friends who went to the school. But now that he thought about it, they should be somewhere in the compound as well, and he didn't know if they were all okay. Not everyone who had been defeated was able to be resurrected. The clan had taken hundreds, possibly thousands of casualties. Now, in relative terms, that was less than 5%, versus over 90% permanent casualties for the Gralpedran Templars, but that was not the point. Those were all people that might be his friends, or the family of his friends. The underground safe zones hadn't been breached that he knew of, but many of his friends had powerful parents, and they would have gone to fight and defend the new home's territory. Leo started to help sort through the rubble, picking out books and stacking them in orderly piles using the Thorn Vines spell. It wasn't a powerful nature magic and was mostly a crowd control skill, but it was great at grabbing things. Then someone else's vine tried to grab the same books he was going for, and Leo looked up to see that Cindy Lou had joined them and was using her magic to clean the rubble from the classroom. Her eyes were red, and Leo feared the worst, until he heard her mumbling about her backpack, which was left at school when she evacuated and held many precious memories. Cindy Lou liked to keep pictures, gifts from classmates, and other trinkets along with her school supplies. "We're 2 classrooms over. Our class was there," Leo informed her, pointing with his chin to his left. "You're sure?" Leo nodded. "I've been working my way over there, but didn't want to leave work behind me." That helped calm her a little, and Leo discreetly sent Vines over to sort through the rubble around her desk, protecting her backpack as well as he could. There was likely going to be a lot of damage to the trinkets inside, as an entire level of the school was above their classroom. But as long as he held the vines over it, nothing that shifted would damage it more than it already was, and Cindy Lou should be able to recover something. Slowly, they made their way through the classrooms of the older students, sorting belongings into piles and books into stacks. The rubble was left where it was, in case someone's skill would let them save energy using it to rebuild the place. That was the best that they could do, as Leo didn't have enough magic to fully rebuild a whole school. He didn't really care, though. More of his friends were starting to come out to help them clean up the rubble, along with parents. That let them all know that their classmates were all right, and that they would get any precious memories that were left in the rubble back today. Finally, Leo and Cindy Lou made it to their classroom, and the turtle carefully extracted her backpack, along with all the ornaments and school supplies that had been in her now crushed desk. "I think that this is everything from your desk." Cindy Lou rushed to the cluster of vines and carefully picked out everything, trying not to cry at the condition of her treasures. It was all smashed, and her favorite pencil was broken. But when she opened her backpack, a small smile spread over her face. The stuffed trinkets were dirty but not torn, and the pictures that she had inside her bag were all in pristine condition. That was the important part. Those had all been hand-drawn by her friends, and they were irreplaceable. Leo kept sorting through his classmates' stuff, being careful to keep it all organized by person as he stacked it off to the side. That way, everyone could find what they had left at the school. But other than Cindy Lou's backpack, there wasn't too much in the class. Most of the kids didn't bring much to school with them other than their notebooks. But they really didn't need to bring much. The school provided what they needed, and most of them didn't take anything home at all unless they had an out-of-class assignment, which was uncommon in the early years. Only after they had awakened a system did they start devoting all their time to study. As long as they learned to read and write in the first few years, the school generally felt that they had done their basic job. Anything that they retained from the other classes was a bonus. By their standards, Cindy Lou and Leo were model students because both had excellent memories and they actually actively learned new things outside of class, even if it risked having them labeled a know-it-all by their peers. Chapter 17:12. Pay attention. As the sun set, Carl surveyed his handiwork. The majority of their district was rebuilt now, and what wasn't rebuilt was largely vacant, as there were a number of buildings with no residents, so they hadn't been prioritized. That didn't mean that the work was nearly done. No, they only had the bare minimums on them, none of the defensive wards that had been placed on the buildings in the past. Those would be done on a larger scale for general defense, and then purchased individually by the occupants of various units. That was how it had been done before, and nobody saw a reason not to do it that way again. Everyone had lost during the attack, so it was up to the survivors to rebuild their own lives with their own abilities. For many, this would be a good opportunity. They were getting a new residence with a blank slate to do what they wanted, and not a legacy of inherited changes to the buildings. Except for the elders, that was. Their homes had mostly survived the attacks, so they only had some minor repairs to make, and perhaps some cleaning to do if they were taking their disciples in until more of the housing could be completed. Carl returned to the freshly repaired dining hall for an evening meal with the others who were repairing apartments all day long, and found that the bunnies serving the meal were in a much better mood than usual. "You seem unusually chipper. Did something good happen?" The bunny nodded vigorously. "Your friend Opal made us a new break room, and it is absolutely spectacular. I've never seen anything so luxurious, and it's all for us." Carl laughed at her excitement. "Well, I'm glad that you like it. Let me know if there is anything missing from it, and I will send Opal back to add more features." The bunny shook her head. "No, it's got absolutely everything. She even gave us our own stocked kitchen, so we can change our meal schedule when we're working odd shifts." "Well, then, it sounds like everything is under control. Did they fix your residences yet? If not, I will get to them first thing in the morning." "They did. We stay near the supply warehouse, so our building was in pretty good shape. The Dana mage fixed the spells on it this morning." The man behind Carl in line coughed politely, reminding him that he was holding up the line to talk to the server, and Carl moved down the line, loading up a plate with a little of everything that they had to offer. It wasn't any different from usual, which was a comforting thing for most of the clan, who were used to the menu schedule. Leo's friends, in particular, seemed particularly happy with this news, as there were grilled cheese sandwiches on the menu today, and they had been looking forward to them all day. He was nearly finished with dinner when Dana entered, flanked by Elder Douglas and a half-dozen elders that Carl didn't recognize. They were among the less powerful elders, and while he had seen them at the battle with the Templars, he didn't know what they specialized in. Most of the elders didn't have a trade skill or a particular assignment in the clan. They were protectors of the junior members and spent most of their time working toward peak immortality and eventually, hopefully, supremacy. If they could do that, then they could put themselves in contention for the next clan leader if and when Nerissa decided to step down from the role and focus on her own growth. That was what most Supremes did when they felt that the workload of running a clan was becoming too much. They would step down, appoint a successor, and become a guardian ancestor for the clan, while going into seclusion. However, finding a second Supreme within a clan was rare, as many would leave to start their own when they were still bottlenecked at peak immortal. That sort of small clan was a dream for many power-hungry sorts, or the bored and idle ones who ran out of things they wanted to do in their home clan. The timeline might be measured in centuries, but for immortals at that power level, that was barely any time at all. A few centuries in isolation to master their powers was hardly worth mentioning. In fact, some of the elders had been in isolation for so long that when the clan was attacked they realized they didn't even know most of the immortals in the compound anymore, and most of them didn't know the isolated elders. It was a good excuse for them to come out and see the world again, get themselves grounded in reality to try to break through the mental limitations that had unconsciously built during their time away. There was a fine line between avoiding distractions and completely losing touch. However, the true shock was not that the clan had changed while they weren't paying attention. It was how some of the elders who had taken active roles in the clan had advanced. Elder Fersham had been at the peak for many years, But Elder Malcolm had gotten much stronger, and Elder Socrate felt like he was also about to reach the state of peak immortal. That was the most surprising of all, as Socrate was among the youngest of the elders. And for that reason, he was the most in demand of them all. Everyone thought that he had made a breakthrough in alchemical concoctions that had allowed him to grow so fast, but really Elder Fersham simply had a natural aptitude for growth, and his class had recently been changed, which gave him a few skills that allowed his power to skyrocket. The elders who had been in seclusion had no idea that Carl had created a set of system stones within the clan compound, and that small revelation was about to turn the clan on its head. Chapter 1713. Explain it again. Explain that to me again. You said that the avatar of the World Dragon recreated the system stones to let nearly anyone with a World Dragon aligned system simply change their class. One of the secluded elders was asking Dana.
Yes.
As long as they have the requirements, which are usually capping out all their skills and having a signature ability that is not part of their skill tree. Though, sometimes it will let them do it early simply because the system thinks that they are ready to move on. However, we don't recommend that, and it's not likely to be an issue for any of the elders. Dana agreed. And how long ago did this happen? Less than a month? Don't worry, it's still a very new thing. There wasn't much time between it happening and the attack, so it's unlikely that they got the word of the rapid progression of our members. That's not why they attacked us, they just got greedy and then got schooled. The elders at the table with her nodded in agreement. If the Templars had known that the new home had gained a number of high-grade class advancements recently, they would have reassessed their threat level and wouldn't have let their members get so arrogant that the war started with a failed mugging before everyone was in place. According to the information that they had managed to gather in the previous few hours, the Templars' guild master hadn't even intended to attack that day. They had been planning to go in the morning, with the advantage of an early start, so they could hit while the majority of the elders were still in bed. That would have given them a few extra minutes to get in place and solidify their attacking lines inside the clan compound before the barriers went up, instead of forcing the fight outside. The whole thing had just been a litany of failure from start to end, culminating in the complete annihilation of their clan, and someone taking a bath in the blood of their elders. Dana hadn't told the elders that it was Ray, but when they went to check the compound, they had found the remnants of the pool's activities and the blood that had been completely drained of essence. So, it seems that we have wasted time, and there was actually a much easier way to advance. I've got nearly 20 skill points, and I've filled my skill tree. If I can advance, I'll be able to buy out one whole branch of a new skill tree. The elder's excitement was obvious, but Dana saw a small problem with his plan. All the best classes charged exorbitant rates for their skills. The Golem Mistress class started at 5 points per skill, and some of them further up the tree were as much as 50 points per skill. Now, the skill looked amazing, and while she couldn't read the exact description, it was listed as an epic grade skill that had the picture of an army of golems as its skill tree icon. It was likely worth the 50 points. But if you were used to a warrior class standard or another lower tier class, where they were 1 skill point each, it was going to be a brutal awakening. Why don't we all go to the class change obelisk after dinner? It should be interesting, and if you're a bit short on skills, we can make a stop off at the repository. The elder on duty defended it the whole battle, and while it was a bit messy on the front porch, the building is fine. The nearby clan members chuckled at her comment. The elder at the skill repository was an old monster. He seemed mostly harmless and lazy, if a bit irritable. But when he was motivated, there likely wasn't anyone in the clan that could defeat him except the clan leader herself. Elder Socrate smiled. Why don't we invite Carl and Remy as well? Between the two of them, I am certain that they can find a way for everyone to get a class that will truly help them advance. Dana winked at him, then laughed as Remy appeared and slithered up the alchemy elder's chair to poke her head out in front of him. She was getting bigger than she was after she shrunk after evolution, but Dana suspected that she was deliberately shrinking herself with unobtrusive behemoth so that she could be cuter. As it was, she was about 3 meters long, and only about as thick as Dana's arm. Large for a snake, tiny for a naga. Yes, we have invented all sorts of new advancement aid medications. I'm certain that there will be something that will help you. She insisted. Somehow that sounds less reputable coming from a venomous snake. Technically, I'm a naga, not a snake.
See?
Arms. I stand corrected. What have you come up with? Has it been tested yet? Most of it has been tested. Some of it is brand new. I've been working with Elder Socrate to use runic alchemy to create new forms of pills, but we haven't had time to run clinical trials yet. Carl said that I'm not allowed to test them on the bunnies or the children, and they're the only ones who wouldn't say no to trying strange drugs. The elder snorted as he tried and failed to restrain his laughter. I nearly choked on my beer. The Carl sounds like a wise person. You should not test new drugs on children, and the bunnies shouldn't be subjected to anything painful or potentially harmful. It's already difficult enough to catch them to get them to do things. Remy considered that. The bunnies brought her all her materials from the storage warehouse. They were an important part of her operation. He had a point. All right. But elders are fine, right? I can show you all the research that went into them. We can even have a fluffy, immortal healer on hand in case things go wrong. Why fluffy? I don't know. People seem to appreciate it, though. Chapter 17:14. But it did work. Bemused, the elder held out his hand for Remy to hand him one of her experimental progress-enhancing pills. The elder stared at it for a second, trying to analyze it, then gave up. The system tells me that it's a high-grade body-forging pill. What's it supposed to do? That sounds right. It's supposed to make you more durable. Improved health pool? More durable body? It depends on how your system interacts with it, I think. The elder shrugged and popped it into his mouth, while Remy and Elder Socrate both took out their notepads. Dana watched curiously as the two alchemists settled into their element, carefully dissecting every change in the flow of energy through the elder. At least, until he grunted in pain, and his body began to turn red. Is it supposed to do that? One of the others asked. Probably. It's making his body more durable, so there should be some change. Remy agreed. It looks like it hurts. You're not wrong. But it is working. There was a saying, no pain, no gain, but this seemed like it was just deliberately painful. Then, his skin settled back to its normal light brown tone, and the elder coughed into a napkin, spitting up a blob of something black that Elder Socrate quickly confiscated from him for research. Knowing what impurities were expelled was important, because it told them what to adjust in the pill to optimize the output. What does the system say? Socrate asked. A 5% increase in maximum health that appears to be perfect, and a 30-minute weakness debuff. Remy nodded, and activated both a healing totem and a cleansing totem under the table. The debuff faded, and the elder smiled. The change is still there, and I don't see any spell effects on myself, so it should be permanent. Elder Socrate high-fived Remy, who was looking exceptionally smug about their victory. All right, we know what it does now, but if it's like the recipe that it was based on, it only works once. So, the demand won't be exceptionally high. I am certain that most of the warrior types are going to want it, and likely some of the mages as well, since they need all the health they can get. But 5% health isn't a priority for most of the clan, and the ingredients are exceptionally expensive. Socrate explained. That is a shame. How expensive are we talking? It would sell for somewhere around 15 clan credits a pill. The elders winced. That was an expensive pill even if it was a one-time use item, and not something that they would need to imbibe regularly. I can see how that would be a specialty item in nature. Likely the tanky sorts would want it the most as they get the most out of it. The others have much better things to buy with that many clan credits. They all got up from the table, and Dana motioned for Carl to join them. If these elders needed something, he could help them out. All he had to do was blame it on being an avatar of the world dragon, and they would buy nearly any excuse. But once they were a bit more familiar with the current situation, they would certainly realize that Carl had a number of skills that were tailor-made for helping immortals advance. After all, many of the other elders already knew. Carl called Kara, who never liked to miss a chance to watch while people tried to change their class. The little expressions that they made while they were in the class change menu were always entertaining. The others didn't seem eager to push Remy for a test sample of the new pill, though it surely needed at least 1 or 2 more rounds of testing before they could say for certain that it was safe to distribute and put on the available recipe list at the alchemy hall. Carl stepped to the front when they reached the old temple. All right, we have all warrior-type classes, I think. The colors all line up with various sorts of warriors, though you're all an advanced class. As long as you have at least one learned skill that is better than what is in your skill tree, you should be able to awaken a new class that is better than what you have in every way. The class change obelisk is designed for world dragon-created systems, including the one that is inherent to this world. But it also works on the laughing god systems in unpredictable ways. The elders nodded. Given who created those systems, everything was at least a little bit random. As long as it was vaguely related to what you wanted, you did all right. All right, let's get this started. Who is feeling exceptionally confident that they have what it takes to get the system to give them an outstanding new class? Carl continued. The elders laughed. Obviously, the answer was all of them. They had gone into seclusion because the only thing left that they could think of was to utterly and completely focus on forcing themselves forward. The elder who had taken Remy's experimental pill stepped forward, and Carl gestured to the obelisk. Just put your hand on it and give it a bit of mana to let it know you're serious. The elder nodded, then placed his hand on the plinth, which lit up with golden light. His eyes went vacant, and his face went slack, leaving him standing there slack-jawed, as if in amazement for a few seconds before his expression shifted to confusion, then intense focus. This is always the best part, watching them try to pick the best class. Kara informed the others. I can see how you would find it entertaining. I had not thought about this part. I had always assumed that it would move you to a separate space where you were safe during the process. One of the men replied. Technically, he is in a separate space, he's just not entirely invisible. So, like a nearby separate space? I'm not clear on all the rules, but I can tell that he's actually separated from us, and I couldn't go rifle through his pockets, even if I wanted to, she replied. The elder accepted that at face value, but Elder Sacre knew perfectly well that Carl could have added something to have them properly shielded within the separate space, or even put the obelisk in one with an occupancy limit. But he hadn't, for whatever reason. Possibly just because he also enjoyed watching the excitement of the random clan members as they picked a new class for themselves. Though, now that he thought of it, the ones using the obelisk usually were hidden from sight while they were in the class change menu. Chapter 17:15. White Wings. The next elder rushed forward as soon as the first one opened his eyes, then ran into an invisible barrier before he could touch him. What the? Oh right, it's a separate space and we can just see into it, he realized. The other elders examined the space for a moment and then shrugged. It really was simply transparent. There was no apparent reason for it. The first elder stepped toward them with a confused expression. Why is everyone looking at me like that? We could see into the separate space while you were doing your advancement, and the other elders have been laughing at your expressions. Kara informed him cheerfully. The warrior smiled down at the badger. And was any of this your idea? I mean, not really. I can see into it either way, so I just like to watch. That likely needs some study. Elder Socrate informed her. Kara laughed. It's a chaos-related system, and I am all that is badger. Why would it stop me from doing fun things? I hate that I don't have a rebuttal for that. The warrior winked at her. My system is a laughing god-focused one. He was the one who created the system on my world. After a few thousand years, you come to expect the system to troll you at all times. That sounds like fun. There are always new pranks to play. The warrior laughed at Kara. You know, I strongly suspect that he actually made your species, hybridized it from something else because no species should be so closely attuned to a sense of humor, and he's supposed to have come from the human pantheon. Come from? Dana asked. As the legend goes, he tried, some say successfully, to seduce the empress of the human pantheon, then either ghosted her after getting her pregnant or was run off and banished from the heavens by her husband. It depends on who you ask what the story is, but it seems clear that he was originally one of the human pantheon's gods. Kara's expression made the elders laugh. If the laughing god hadn't created the chaos badger lineage, he was destined to be best friends with them. There was no other option. Two beings that chaotic would be immediately drawn to each other to see who had the better ideas, and would naturally become the target of each other's pranks. The next elder touched the stone and vanished for half a second, before Opal created a projection of the inside of the space so they could continue to watch. How does that work? Can just everyone see inside but me? One of the elders asked. Dana shook her head. I think only Kara and Carl can see inside all the time. But if Kara can see inside, Opal can see her thoughts. One of the other elders shrugged. I can see inside as well, it just takes a bit of effort as the entrance to the space isn't locked down. It would only be hard to try to interfere with the process. Seeing into it is easy. Well, at least it's not just me. The elder gave Dana a look of solidarity that made Kara laugh. Dana is soul bonded with Carl. She can see my thoughts too. She just blocks me out so that I don't play pranks on her. If she wanted to peek inside, she could. Damn it. I'm going next before you guys get too used to laughing at our expressions. The second warrior came out with a proud expression and then spread white feathered wings from his back. Now we're talking. I got the Avenger class and advancement on the Paladin class. It did weird things to my wings, though. Kara hopped up on his back, grabbing his shoulder and standing on his ass, so she could examine the wings. No, they look like they work properly. I don't see any strange joints, musculature, or unique features to the feathers, other than the holy magic. The man laughed. I am a sparrow-type beastkin. While I'm usually transformed to hide my wings, they were never bright white. These look more like seraphim wings than bird wings. Elder Socrate hummed, and the man gave him a suspicious look. What is that noise for? Well, if they are seraphim wings, they're quite valuable. The feathers are used in a number of healing and beneficial alchemy recipes. You're not plucking my wings for your alchemy. Remy giggled, and the man brought up a holy light barrier before Kara could do it for her. Socrate smiled at the Naga matriarch. They're onto us. We will have to wait until he molts and then bribe the bunnies who clean his rooms to bring us the fallen feathers. They're not as potent, but they'll be good enough for us to know if they're really seraphim feathers or just white sparrow feathers. Remy nodded. Knowledge is important. If he was more confident that they were still regular feathers, the elder would have plucked one himself. But he had gained a number of seraphim-related skills, and with a change, he was concerned that they might not be, and then he would be facing eternal harassment from the alchemy elder. The next to enter was a shaman, which got Remy more excited. Advanced shamans were always a good class. It didn't matter which path they followed, there was no route from shaman that was actually useless. So, while there was no obvious change to him, or even his class color in the interface, the pleased expression let Remy know that he'd managed to unlock something worth knowing. She would have to go investigate later. None of the beasts had actual classes, only affinities for certain types of skills and magic. But Remy definitely would have been a shaman if she had gotten one. It was even in her name when she was younger. All right, spill. What sort of cool new spells did you get? Inquiring shamans need to know. Chapter 1716, and Group Effort. One after another, the elders made their way to the class change obelisk, and all emerged with matching excited expressions and a new set of class skills to learn. From what Carl could tell, none of them had gotten anything that was truly outlandish. If they had, they were doing an excellent job of moderating their excitement to make them seem no more excited than any of the others. That took a lot of the fun out of it for Kara, but the clan's elders now had a bit more firepower than they did yesterday, and they wouldn't be found lacking if someone tried to take up where the Templars had failed. Sometimes, allies that weren't willing or able to step up during the battle due to either timing or outside factors would still hold a grudge. Especially when you completely wiped out a clan, instead of integrating them. Not that there had been much chance of integration. They had lost that opportunity when they refused to pay the damages, and had chosen to attack the elders that went to claim it. Well, it looks like we're not going to be going back into seclusion for some time. There is so much damage to the residential areas that we're going to be at it for years, the shaman noted, distracting from Remy's eagerness to corner him for information. Oh, are you a craftsman as well then? Dana asked. No. But it's part of the role of elder to supply the clan with the resources that the juniors need. We could get away with rotating in and out of isolation with the others, but now we've got to rebuild the stockpiles so that everyone can replace what was lost. The clan credit system isn't worth much if there is nothing for them to trade the credits in for. He had a point. With all the damaged gear, broken weapons, lost trinkets, and belongings, they needed everything. And then there would be everything that they needed to keep their growth rate up, and that meant everyone would be in a hurry to trade in credits before the good stuff ran out. The reserves of the clan warehouse wouldn't last long like that. Is there anything that we can do to help? I know that we're not elders and are just starting the void stage, but we're pretty confident in our ability to gather resources. Dana offered. Well, we usually don't go places alone. We accompany a group of younger members to dungeons and hidden realms. If you want to join a group, I'm sure that we can work something out. Carl smiled at Dana, who laughed, while the elders gave the pair a confused group expression. I have a bonus to challenges, and it causes some instances to glitch out. They will let me go in alone, to a completely separate dungeon from everyone else, and just go wild. But it counts my beasts as part of me, as a solo contestant. Carl explained. Oh, that is just unfair. If it lets you take the beasts, that's a whole team in a dungeon tailored for a single person. No, it doesn't change the dungeon, just lets me solo it. So, no reduced loot, no loot sharing, and all you have to do is clear a dungeon solo? If you can cause that glitch for all of us in a suitably easy dungeon, we could make a fortune, the shaman realized. That is true. Though, from what I'm told, many of the dungeons here are just based on the strongest person who enters. We've encountered that as well because I have an epic grade constitution. Overall, my experience with dungeons and trials in the immortal realm are limited, but universally unusual. I should not be shocked that the World Dragon's avatar has issues doing anything in the normal and expected fashion. Carl laughed at the shaman's expression. Well, if we go get enough members to do a group at Void Immortal, there should be enough of you to go at Ascended, since it usually sets the difficulty to the middle of the rank. The only question is who is willing to go, and where are we going to find one that is open and available? You just leave that to us. We know of many locations that have instances we might be able to enter. The locals might put up a fuss, but as we've just been attacked, they'll understand that we're in need and are willing to go a bit further than usual to push our way in for resources. Carl sighed. If that one we were in the other day was open for longer, it would have been perfect. But no, it's only open for a short time. The elders were silent for a few minutes, then the Avenger whistled, getting all their attention. I've got one. Just outside Tell, there is a suitable dungeon. Max 5 people, fixed difficulty at low Ascended. The loot is generally considered trash for Ascended Immortals, but it's a good spot for gear to sell to the juniors. How is your team, Carl? Can they take a low Ascended dungeon? It's likely 2 or 3 times more damage and durability than a mid-void immortal dungeon. Carl nodded. We should be fine. If we want to find a couple more, we can make 2 full groups. Or we can go as a small group. The elders considered the options, then the Avenger pointed to 2 others. I will take you and Dana, plus the shaman and Socrate. He's not the greatest fighter, but he's got some skills that help with loot. That should be good enough for a 5-person run, and one team will offend them less when we show up and cut in line. Kara smiled at the way that he just casually assumed they would cut in line to go next. This guy might seem like he was pretty uptight, but he had his priorities in order. They needed loot. Chapter 1717. Tell Dungeon Arrival. The elders all turned to Socrate, who sighed and opened a portal for them. He hadn't volunteered for this run, but it looked like he was going to have to go anyhow and live up to the duties of a ranked elder, while someone else took care of the alchemy warehouse for the day. All right, off we go. But just for the record, this is a terrible idea, and it's going to be utter chaos once we arrive. The moment that those words were out of his mouth, Socrate regretted them. It was as if speaking them out loud was making it a certainty and not a mere possibility. And he already had the portal open. The dungeon at Tel was a lively place, always open, but guarded by the Telhusto clan, a group of former elders from other sects and clans who had banded together for the sake of making money and guarding the dungeon. Like so many others, they also liked to make challenges or take a cut of the earnings of groups entering. And with a pair of early Void Immortals, Socrate had every expectation that their group was going to face the shakedown. Only, when they arrived, nobody would meet their eyes, and the crowd simply parted to let them go directly to the dungeon. That was not at all what usually happened when you entered this place, and even the members of the Telhusto clan simply nodded politely to them. The two groups didn't have much of a working relationship, though a few would come to make purchases from the new home merchant clan. They had also sat out the battle, not supporting either side. Perhaps they were just embarrassed to have been outsiders when they were so close to the new home. By geographical location? No, that didn't make sense. The Condom commanders and the Hyperion sect were both closer to New Home than they were. Then, he heard the whispers. Did you hear about the Hyperion sect? No survivors. They even went and hunted down the ones who fled to the Templars for safety. They didn't even spare the bunnies. I heard that they kept the bunnies. Just came in and claimed their contracts to bring them back to New Home. Haven't you been there? There are bunnies everywhere in New Home. Still, who wipes out a clan like that? I heard that the Templars refused to be disbanded and fought back when they came to collect their fifth. That's why the Templar compound was wiped out. I saw it myself. I was in the city when the fight started. The clan leader came and demanded their dues, and got jumped by the Templars and their allies. Then, she called in reinforcements, some teenage elf at the supreme rank and the pair of void immortals. I don't think they're actually void immortals, they're definitely elders suppressing their aura. They marched through the compound like it was nothing. I was watching from the auction mart's upper floor, and it was like an undead apocalypse. Those two showed up and then there were undead everywhere. But not summoned undead. They turned the fallen Templars into blood golems and used them to wipe out their own clan. It was absolutely brutal. In her space, Ray laughed. She hadn't even been thinking about the effect on the bystanders elsewhere in town. If they weren't fighting, they didn't matter. But knowing that they appreciated her work so much was incredibly satisfying. Dana sighed as she listened to the rumors running wild about their battle. Now, it made sense why nobody wanted to get in their way. They made it to the front of the line, and Dana frowned as Carl moved to stand at the front, with the Avenger. There were a pair of ascended immortals standing by the portal as guards, and they didn't look as intimidated as everyone else. Elder, the guard greeted them. Elder. Then Carl took a ring of titanic strength from his inventory and tossed it to the guard. We need to do a run. That should cover the fee, yes? Ring of titanic strength, uncommon grade. Immortal rank 150th. Increases base strength by 400%. Adds 500 points of base strength. The gate guard smiled as he inspected the item. Yes, that will do very well. Enjoy your visit to the Tell Dungeon. Sure, there was a good chance that you would get rare or epic items from the dungeon, and ones at a higher level of power than the rings Carl had made just after arriving at the clan. But none that would be so perfectly matched to the needs of a warrior or melee combat-focused class. Carl led the way into the dungeon, and the moment that they entered, Elder Socrate began to laugh. Good sir, you may have mastered the art of bribery. Those rings are just so perfect to give to other clans that it's almost a joke to give them anything else. Carl smiled. And they don't cost me anything but time. All the better. The beasts came out now that they were in the dungeon, and Ray shifted back to humanoid form. This place looks fun. We've got wilderness creatures to play with. We should have brought men. The elders laughed, and the Avenger shook his head. You can't bring a green dragon here, if you want to have them live. They try to pet all the things, and in a dungeon, not even if not friend, why friend-shaped will save them. The beasts are all driven rabid by the dungeon's magic. However, I have heard that there is a rare spawn pet for rangers, a beast that isn't feral. If we get it, try to keep it alive until we exit. Once it sees us, everything else will attack it. That's how you know that it's the rare spawn. Unfortunately, I don't know what sort of beast it is. I don't know if it's always the same or a random, powerful magical beast from the dungeon. However, I do know that it can be used by rangers to unlock a special class and bond an extra pet. That sounded a lot like the trigger for the Beast Masterclass to Carl. Chapter 17-18. Chain Pull. In that case, we really should have brought a ranger of some sort. It sounds like my old class, which could bond multiple magical beasts at or below their own level. It's a huge improvement on the basic ranger class progression. However, if we can keep it alive and have it bond with someone after we get home, we could get out of here in much better shape than we left. A new epic class for someone in the clan would be a huge win for us, Carl explained. Elder Socrate nodded. Indeed it would. Having someone with multiple magical beasts on their side, and the bonuses that come with them, would be huge. Getting a class like that is a fast track to Elder for certain. Now, there are a number of routes that would work to clear this dungeon. If we go left, we will start with the boars and the boar man champions. If we go right, they'll be last, and we will start with the snakes and bears. Carl nodded. What's on the far side of the dungeon? Kobolds, hellhounds, and wolverines. Carl nodded. All right, so the only section with no beastkin or bipedal monsters is the bear section. I say we do that last, as it sounds like the most likely place for us to find a beast that will go rogue. Most likely near the boss. Socrate nodded. And if we do that part last, we will likely find it right at the end of the dungeon. That makes sense. All right, off we go. Oh, this is going to be so much food. Ray laughed, right before changing back into spider form. What does that mean? Elder Alex, the white-winged Avenger class member of their team, asked. We collect the actual bodies of beast-type monsters and keep them for food. If you put them in storage, they don't vanish when you leave the dungeon. So, it's the same as having a pig farm. Hawk squawked before soaring up into the distance. He loved pork. Well, I suppose if you have system storage that is big enough for that, it's fine. I can't store something as large as a 2-ton boar in a storage slot, and you can't put the bodies in a storage ring. The system doesn't count them as real items in that way. Carl shrugged. They had never had an issue. Hawk wasn't waiting for the rest of them to start the run, and a streak of deep blue fire flowed down from the sky as he attacked, and the smell of roast boar filled the area. I guess that's our cue. If you could call your golems, please. Elder Alex sighed. Dana laughed as she summoned her golems, and Ray vanished off into the trees to go find the boars that Hawk was harassing. Everyone could hear it squealing in outrage as it was roasted alive, but its attacks were proving ineffective against the fast-moving phoenix. It was firing wind blades at him, but Hawk had no issue dodging them. In contrast, the boar was practically a stationary target against the incoming flames. Oathbreaker giggled as he was summoned by Carl as an epic golem and saw what was going on in the dungeon. Oh, we're farmers now? That sounds fun. Then he was also gone into the distance, and Elder Alex sighed. Why do I get the feeling that group battle tactics are not your strong point? Dana giggled and stuck out her tongue at Carl. No, he's just terrible about keeping his companions under control in general. But they are doing what they're supposed to. The epic golems have gone to collect a group of boars and pull them to us so that we can fight them in the open instead of in the trees. They're quite intelligent and don't need direct orders to know what needs to be done. A horde of boars charged out of the trees as she finished speaking, and her golems moved to intercept. With auto parry from her skills, Oathbreaker was very close to the ultimate tank. Nothing was going to get past his blades, and he took no damage if nothing could hit him. Added to the other golems, and then Carl's spectral knights, their entire group could attack from the second rank, with no real threat to them. This is the way to do a dungeon. Socrate laughed as he used a skill to fire stone bullets at the boars. Agreed. Elder Alex laughed as he activated Circle of Light and turned the whole battleground into a danger zone for the boars. Thor transformed, keeping himself shrunk to roughly the size of one of the Golden Dragon Nation's train cars. That was small enough that he could fight, and large enough that he could defend a whole side of the battle as Ray and Hawk pulled more boars toward them. The spider called all her undead, both the spectral knights and a group of lich lords, to stay at the battle, and then vanished again, leaving the boars behind as she went with her spider golems to find more. Are we just doing the whole fight here? Elder Kushal, their shaman, asked. He was supposed to be the healer if they were actually taking damage over Remy's healing totem's ability. But mostly he was just calling lightning as he waited. Just up to the first boss, I think. Hawk says that there are 3 bosses in here. The boar guy, the hellhound Cerberus, and a giant bear. We will move between each section because it's a pain to pull monsters too far. But it's easy to get everything in a zone to converge. Remy nodded eagerly. I could just use Apocalypse and everything in the zone would come straight to us. But that's not as evenly paced as letting Hawk and Ray do it. Elder Alex shook his head in dismay. He had no doubt that the insane little snake girl would indeed use an area spell large enough to cover a third of a dungeon, if she didn't think it would be inconvenient for others. There was no fear of being defeated apparent in her tone. Chapter 1719, Area Damage. Meteor proved to be the most effective tactic against the crowded horde of boars that had been gathered by the beasts and the golems. You could rain them down and hit everything continually without running into other issues. Of course, there were Hellstorm, Vortexes, multiple Lightning Zone spells, the Circle of Light, in 2 different iterations, and a Toxic Fog over what was now a Naga Swamp. But that was why the meteors were so effective. With so many area effects going, it would mess up the flow if they started pushing inward and closing ranks. It was better to keep their distance and let Ray and the undead herd the beasts into the swamp, where they would be continually damaged and unable to escape. Spread the group. The next incoming boars are going to be from our right flank. Alex warned as he shifted his own positioning. He had been keeping close track of what the beasts had been pulling and where they had gotten it from so that they could move the golems to create an opening to funnel the boars through. As long as everything was inside the perimeter before it started fighting back, all was well in the world. But if they started to attack from the outside of the formation, everything would begin to collapse, and the golems would face enemies from the front and the back. Enemies that were individually stronger than they were, though not by as much as the Avenger had initially assumed. The buffs that Carl could give to the group were astounding, and with the little fox continually playing a song of inspiration to increase their attack speed, the damage per second certainly wasn't lower than any less prepared low-ascended group would have been. That should be the last of the boars. All that is left is the boss, and he doesn't look edible. Hawk informed the team through their mental link. Hawk says it's just cleanup now. The golems will close ranks, and we will wipe out the last of the boars. Carl relayed. Socrate mentally calculated their timing. They were way ahead of schedule, thanks to the massive number of golems and summoned undead in the group. Carl and Ray each called a dozen spectral knights, and then another half-dozen lich lords, added to the basic golems that they could use, and it was an overwhelming force. The surprising part was that Dana didn't have more golems of her own. The most likely reason was that she wasn't compatible with the necromancy-based summons, which was completely understandable. But she must also be short on skill points, and hadn't managed to get most of the skills in her new skill tree. The elders were used to immortals who had taken much longer to reach the void stage, so they would naturally have had decades of missions to build skill points, and would have a stockpile of them when they switched. If Dana had used all hers up to maximize her old class before changing, then she would still be waiting on the best parts of the new class. The Crushing Constructs skill combined with Elemental Wrath certainly did add a massive amount of damage to her golems, though. That core class skill of the Golem Master class was enough to make the class worth taking, even if you didn't have any spare points. Crushing Constructs increases golem damage or defense by an amount equal to one chosen skill. Damage type and effects change to match the chosen skill. Move toward the boss. The last boars are almost down now, and we can start redeploying the golems. Carl instructed a few minutes later. Being so outnumbered, they couldn't even attack the last few boars. There wasn't space to attack around the constructs or properly target what was left of the dungeon's spawn. All right, we will wait for the last of the golems there. I'm assuming you'll just summon them to you when you arrive. Carl nodded. As soon as the last of the boars are dead, I will call fresh golems, and we can start on the boss. Hawk silently rejoiced. If everyone was leaving early, that meant that nobody was going to fight him for the corpses. Carl would steal them from his pile later. That was certain, but these others wouldn't fight him for his food. In his mind, that made them much more trustworthy. Almost likable. For Hawk, that was high praise, and he was already calculating his gains as he picked up the last of the boar corpses, each of them the size of a dire bear with tusks. So much meat. The group approached the clearing where the boss was stomping around, giving orders to a pair of large boars, who were tearing up the ground for him, hunting for truffles. Remy's eyes got excited at the sight. If there were truffles here, they were an excellent alchemy resource, and she wanted to have them. She had managed to get some growing from the last ones she found, but ones from the dungeon were likely in better condition. Stephen the Incredibly Powerful, the boss mob's nameplate read. That's totally a self-appointed title. Ray joked as she read it. Guaranteed. Do you think that he will smell like bacon when Hawk roasts him? Kara asked. Only one way to find out. Seeing the beast's excitement, the three elders prepared for the fight. You can hold off on the extra mobs. They get a buff from the boss, so it's easier to passively damage them with area damage and finish them after. Socrate explained. Alright, we will assign just a few of the summons to hold them in place. They're likely much easier to kill than the boss, and we've got a lot of area damage, so it should be fine. Carl agreed. Perfect. Send Oathbreaker in to grab the boss, and let's get this started. Just be sure to turn him away from the group. All his major attacks only hit an arc in front of him. Kara laughed at the news. What a shitty boss. Chapter 1720. Boar Boss. Oathbreaker vanished and then appeared in front of the boss, while two more copies appeared in front of the boars and began herding them to the side of the clearing, where they wouldn't be in the way of the main fight. Everyone forward. I will take the boss. He doesn't hold aggro well. Alex, the Avenger, ordered. The demons were doing a pretty good job of holding the boss for now, but they set all the area damage spells and started to attack. It began to turn away from the demons, distracted by the damage to its back. Oathbreaker didn't have a taunt-type skill, so the Avenger used his and pulled its attention forward, then moved to let the demons, auto-parry, do the hard work for him. It was a brilliant technique, at least at first. Then Kara got bored. She dive-bombed the boss face, and while her claws did a wonderful job of tearing out the creature's eyes, that also made it impossible for the boss to track the tanks. So, it started throwing attacks at whatever made noise, or what direction it was being attacked from. Elder Socrate laughed as he realized what had happened, and wondered how it had never happened to their group before. Plenty of warriors attacked the face, going for the extra damage, but he'd never seen the boss blinded before, unless that was an effect of Kara's attacks. Damn it. Dodge those, they're going to hit hard. The Alchemy Elder complained. Relax, it's not that bad. We spread an eternal lightning barrier and limited invulnerability to everyone. The healing totems should be enough. Just keep up the damage, and we'll try to ping-pong him between attackers. Carl replied. How is that going to work? Socrate asked, as he dodged a wave of blade energy. Thor laughed and transformed, then punt-kicked the boss across the clearing. Now, it had no idea what it was supposed to be attacking, or what had hit it. It hadn't seen anything large enough to do that before it was blinded. So, it attacked blindly at Oathbreaker, who was the first to reach him. That kept it turned away from the group for a while, as the boss gained its bearings. It tried to parry the second time that Thor kicked it, but with the weight difference it was a bit like a ball trying to stay on the ground through pure willpower. The elders laughed as quietly as they could at the proud look on the behemoth's scaly face. Every time that the boss looked like it was going to get oriented again and start targeting properly, Thor would smack it with his tail, or kick it and send it flying. The constant movement and the rolling across the ground was keeping the boarmen fully disoriented, and the damage was stacking up fast, even though their two primary damage dealers were underleveled for the instance. The damage was improving as they went, but Socrate was sure that was a skill, and not actual power progression on their part. It was much too fast for it to be real power gain, and they had seen the same effect during the clan war, but on a much larger scale, thanks to the war banner. The first to fall was one of the additional boars, followed quickly by the other. The area damage of the fight, especially Opal's toxic fog, was so high that they simply couldn't hold out any longer, even with just one demon fighting them. That didn't seem to change anything during the boss fight, other than that it freed up two more Oathbreakers to dart in and out of melee combat, chopping up the boss at an incredible rate. The boss fell, and a large purple chest appeared next to the corpse. Is that normal? Carl asked. It is for this dungeon. Unlike some others that delay the loot until the end, this one gives you all the loot up to the boss after the boss falls, Socrate explained. Nice. Now, let's get this open. Kara began. The elders thought about stopping her, but she was a badger. If anyone was likely to get interesting loot from a boss chest, it was probably her. Kara popped the latch on the chest, and a system message appeared in the air. Accept rewards or randomize? All three elders lunged forward to stop the badger, but it was too late. Kara reached out and smashed the randomized portion of the notification with her hand, and the chest closed before raising into the air and spinning wildly. Come on, lucky sevens. Mama needs new shoes. The elders stared at the badger, wondering what she was talking about. Her words seemed to have done something, though. The light from the spinning chest was growing more intense, shifting from purple to gold, to a rainbow that everyone assumed was the sign of randomization. The rainbow-colored chest settled back onto the ground, and Kara leaned forward reverently, inspecting the surface. Then licked it. The chest popped open, and blinding light burst forth for a half-second before fading and revealing a single piece of treasure. Porcine Cleaver of Carnage, Peerless Grade, Immortal Rank Two-Handed Blade. Deals 450% of base damage as physical damage. Increases base strength by 500 points, deals double damage to boar-type enemies. Kara cheered and held the blade over her head in both hands. Alex laughed and took the weapon from her, as it was twice the size of her body. That is absolutely ridiculous. Double damage against boar-type monsters is pretty niche, but the absolute damage that it will deal is crazy. As we've rolled only one item from this boss, should we put it up for draw? The Avenger asked. You can have it. I'm a craftsman, so I'll make something similar and just a bit lower in quality now that I have an idea how the abilities will work together. Some things interact more easily than others, you see. Now, should we get prepared for the second section? It sounded like it was a larger variety than this section. Carl explained. Take 5, grab a snack and a drink, and we'll go. There are 2 types of threats here. The kobolds have hellhounds with them as attack dogs, while the wolverines are a wandering threat. You can find them anywhere, they don't stay in place, and they won't wait for an encounter to end before they attack, so stay on guard. Other than that, it's straightforward until we get to the Cerberus boss. Perfect. Would you like a cupcake?